Well, welcome to the fourth session of creative writing, which is reading and writing fiction. So, after we have practiced writing poetry, identifying the techniques, we proceed with another genre, which is fiction. Fiction is a literary form. It's a literary work in a form of a prose, and usually it is a made-up story. It describes imaginary characters, settings, and events. Now, the most notable forms of fiction that we are going to touch here in the session is our short stories and novels. Fiction is a form of literature that aims to entertain. It may intrigue us, it makes us think, it makes us question our existence, it may even make us laugh or cry, it makes us feel loved or hurt. That could also be the main reason, or that could also be the aims of writing fiction. But ultimately, I could give you the two major reasons or goals of fiction writing, and that is entertainment and meaning. Okay, so when we say entertainment, we write fiction for the entertainment of our readers. We try to make them laugh. We try to make them feel excited. We try to make them feel sad in a way or even inspired. But more so, we write fiction to convey meaning. When we say conveying meaning in fiction, we try to express something that is truthful, something that is um, a big idea or an essential idea. That is what we call conveying meaning in fiction writing. Now, as I said a while ago, we will be discussing novels and short stories. But first, let us establish a concrete distinction between novels and short stories. Now, when we say novels, in the context of as far as the structure or as far as the form is concerned, when we say novels, it typically runs at least 80,000 words or about 300 plus pages when typewritten. And novels are divided into chapters. However, or short stories, on the other hand, they are shorter than novels. They tend to run no longer than 15,000 words or even shorter than 15,000. And short stories are equivalent to just one chapter in a novel. And most of the time, a short story centers in one single event. Unlike novels, it has or it contains various subplots, right? So that's longer already. Unlike short story, it only centers on one single event, or maybe it focuses on one single aspect of the character's life. That could also be part of the form of a short story. Now, just like planting seeds, that is also the way we write fiction. We start with the seed, which is an idea. Okay, it could be a person, it could be a place, it could be a character, a situation, a word or a theme, or even a specific emotion or feeling. It always begins with an idea. Now, as young budding writers, It is important that we develop a keen sense of observation. We have to be keen observants of our surroundings because ideas are everywhere. Okay, so it's part of our day to day living. We can pick up an idea from just by standing in the window, right? Watching people pass by. We can always pick up an idea almost everywhere. So it is important that we use our senses to observe our surroundings in order to get an idea. Now, once we pick the big idea, it does not necessarily mean that we can also think of the entire story for that idea. No, when we pick up an idea, it should be a combination of hard work also because the big idea will only guide you throughout the story, but you still have to learn different techniques and devices in writing fiction. So do not be do not feel assured that once that you have an idea, you already have the whole story. That's not really the case. Now, after we sow the seeds, now this time we put the seeds in the soil, which is the story itself. Okay, so let's try putting the ideas into the soil of a story. Now, this means that we let the seeds grow into fiction more than facts. Remember, our goal is writing fiction, even if the idea came from a real life experience of yours. The outcome should not be a fact or a factual narrative because it becomes more of a memoir. It becomes more of a real life narrative already. So even if you pick an idea coming from your real life experience, it has to grow into fiction. Okay, meaning we do not aim to be so literal about our story, but but we have to do is to use a better storytelling in our story to make it not literal, to make it not factual, and make it more fictional, make it more imaginary. That's why you have to put in so much imagination, even if the idea comes from a real life experience. Okay? Now, of course, when growing plants, you have to water them, right? Just like fiction writing, we have to water the soil of our story with enough imagination. This is what I already emphasized before, right? Since this is creative writing, it also requires imagination. It requires imaginative thinking, and that's what we should use. In order for our idea to grow into a fiction, we have to water it with enough imagination so that the fiction that we are writing could yield into the maximum amount of entertainment and meaning, because that's our targets, to entertain the readers and then to express something meaningful to the readers. Now, I want you to examine the formula: promising ideas plus hard work equals good fiction. Will that be will that be enough for us to remember? If you have a promising idea and then you put in so much hard work, will that secure a good fiction? It's not, okay, because there's still something missing in that formula, and that is the techniques, the fundamentals of fiction writing. We have to learn and master these techniques, the craft, okay? So, to fix the formula, promising ideas plus hard work plus craft would make a good fiction. Okay? If you have this idea, you put hard work to it, you put your imagination to it, and then you apply the knowledge in the elements of fiction, that's where you can actually produce a good fiction. So, what do I mean when I say mastering the craft? Okay, what I am actually talking about are the time-tested techniques and devices that other authors have already used long before. Okay, these are the existing elements of fiction writing, such as characterization, setting, point of view, plot, and theme. These are the things that we have to master also in order to come up with a good fiction. Let's start with characterization. Now, when we read fiction and when we write fiction, it's always about meeting new people, meeting different characters from different genres. So we can say that the characters are the core of any fictional work that we are writing, because these characters are the ones that interact and at the same time they influence other elements of fiction. Okay, characters are the ones that drive a story forward. They carry the readers forward into your story. Okay, at the end of the story, no, from the first up to the last part of your story, the readers should be able to care for your characters, and that is what good characterization is all about, to make the readers care about your characters from the first page to the last page of your story. Now, let me have a short distinction between different types of characters. You already know this already. You have taken up this in your previous English subjects, but let us just recall. The first one is protagonist. When we say protagonist, he or she is the main character of the story. The story revolves around him or her. Now, for example, Jay Gatsby in the movie or in the book The Great Gatsby. Okay, if you have watched the movie, we learned that Jay Gatsby is the protagonist of the story. Okay, he is a mysterious man who devotes his life to winning back Daisy, the elusive woman that he loves. Also, in the Hunger Games, if you're familiar with the book or the movie, It is Katniss Everdeen that is the protagonist of the story. She is a teenager who volunteers as tribute of her district, District 12, for the annual televised, more like a battle royale death match that is called the Hunger Games. So she is the protagonist there. Antagonist, on the other hand, is the character who serves as an obstacle to the protagonist. Okay? This character could hinder the protagonist in achieving his or her goal in the story. That could also be considered antagonist. Now, using the same example from The Great Gatsby, it could be said that Tom Buchanan Tom Buchanan, Daisy's husband, is the antagonist of the Great Gatsby because he is the one who actively stands in the way of Jay Gatsby and Daisy. Also, in the Hunger Games, it is President Coriolanus Snow who is the antagonist. He is the ruler of the capital, and all of Panem, he serves as the antagonist of the story. Now, I'm sure you are familiar with a lot of other types of characters like round characters, flat characters, static characters. Now, you have learned that already in your other English subjects, but let me just classify them into what we call secondary characters. These are the supporting cast. Okay? Secondary characters may undergo development, they may also undergo growth, but the growth or the development is not as intense as the main characters. Lastly, we have what we call extras. When we say extras, these are the characters that usually populate. They populate the fictional world, but most of the time they do not have significant impact on the story. They're just there to populate your fictional world. That is what we call extras. Now, let us remember that characters are also people. Physical, they are emotional, they are living, they are breathing, they are thinking people in your story. Okay? Now the challenge is how do we convey these characters to be so real by just using words, because that is our, what we call this, that is what we're going to use in writing fiction: language, words. So how do we convey that our characters in the story are so real by just use of words? That's really a challenge of good characterization. Now, in creating a character, our characters should be lifelike, meaning they are multifaceted, they are dimensional. Just like what we are as human beings, we have different strengths and weaknesses, we have different flaws, we have different talents, we have different experiences, we come from different backgrounds. Just like that, our characters in the story should also possess multifaceted traits, dimensional traits. Okay, so how do we achieve this? Now, the first major concern in creating a character is for that character to have a desire. Okay, he or she has to have a goal or a target at the end of the story. He or she has to achieve something in the story. That is what we call desire. Because desire drives the character and carries the story forward. Okay? Now, how much of a desire are we talking about? It can be a huge desire, for example, overcoming depression. That is a huge desire for your character to achieve in a short story. Or it can be a simple desire, like, for example, a husband would want to escape his nagging wife. That could be a simple desire that the husband could really want. Okay, so when we say desire, your character should have a target, should have a goal by the end of the story. Now, again, let me repeat that it doesn't matter if the desire is huge or small, as long as the character wants it badly. He or she has to want that desire so badly because that's where tension and interest would come into your story. If the character really desires that desire, then your story would have more tension, your story would have more interest to your readers. The next thing that we have to come up when we create a character is human complexity. This is something that we can also add to our character because when we add human complexity, our characters become more realistic, they become more human like. Now, when we say human complexity, we try to add imperfections, we try to add flaws from our character. Just like us people, right? We cannot say that we are perfect enough because we still acknowledge that we have flaws, we have insecurities. Just like that, our character should also possess unique flaws, unique insecurities that will make them authentic, that will make them more believable and more relatable to your readers. So they should have a particular flaw or imperfection. Okay? We cannot we cannot write a good and evil character because that's too predictable already. For example, in Alice in Wonderland, right? There's always a sense of good and evil in the characters in the Alice in Wonderland, but once we use the concept of good and evil in making a character, your character becomes more predictable because if if the character has been established as good in the beginning, the reader would have no interest in exploring the character already because he or she knows that that character will be good for the rest for the entire story. Just like also having an evil character, it's already predictable. So we add human complexity. We try to make our character more dimensional. Yes, he has these traits. Yes, he has this desire, but he also has flaws. He also has insecurities. Okay, that will make our character more relatable and believable. Now, another major concern in creating a character is for the character to have the capability to change or to grow. Okay? You should have, you should possess, the characters should possess that potential to change. And the readers should also realize that your characters have the potential to grow and change in the end of the story. What else? Also, when we include change in our story, it signifies the story's culmination. Once we realize that our character is changing, that could also signify that the story is ending, that the story is concluding already. Okay? Now, how much of a change are we talking about here? Change can occur to some degree, either a dramatic change or we can have a more gentle form of change, such as a realization or a growth from the character. This technique ensures that our character is not predictable. Okay? So going back, let me recall the three major, the three major concerns that we have to come up when creating a character. Number one is um, desire. Your character should want something. Number two is human complexity. Your character should have flaws and insecurities. And number three is the capability to change. Your character should have the potential to change, whether dramatically or gently or slowly or gradual change at the end of your story. Okay? Now, now that we have learned how to create a character, how then should we convey these characters to the story itself? There are two ways we can do that. That is by showing, and of course by telling. What's the difference between telling a character and showing a character? Sometimes when we tell a character, it is efficient because we as a writer, we are the ones who directly reveal who or what the character is to our readers. Her physical appearance, her traits, we describe them right away to the readers. That is what we call telling the character. Now, showing the character, on the other hand, is different. Okay, showing a character would be more interesting because it gives your readers more chance to engage actively. Okay, one way of showing the character is by revealing his or her emotions or actions in the story. Let's have an example. Another example here. Telling a character. For example, Erin is a 24-year-old artist and interior designer who dislikes having a roommate. Very direct, right? It's already revealed who Erin is. That is what we call telling a character. You directly reveal the age, 24-year-old. You directly reveal the work of Erin, artist. She is an interior designer. And then Erin has a particular trait which is she dislikes having a roommate. That's already telling a character. You describe your character directly. Unlike, let's look at the example below. Sorry, in the slide. I am using the same character, Erin, but this time it's a little expanded if you look at it. Um, and there's no direct description of who Erin is. Okay, I just I just wrote Erin sat at a secluded corner of the cafe sipping coffee. Maybe once her roommate left for the night, she could have a little time to experiment with molding the wire mesh skeleton marionettes. So based on the choice of words, we can infer that Erin is an artist or an interior designer. And while she is waiting at a cafe sipping coffee, she was wishing that her roommate would leave for the night so that she could have time. So, by that simple action, we could infer that Erin does not like having roommates. Okay, do you see the difference how it is constructed? Telling a character would mean directly revealing who the character is to the readers. But showing a character would require you to narrate the actions or the thoughts or the emotions of the character. What else? Telling a character works if your intention is to reveal the character already. For example, his looks, his age, his occupation, and other character traits. You can tell a character if you intend to, but do not over rely on telling a character. If you keep on telling who the characters are in your story, what else is there for the readers to get excited about, right? Because you already revealed who these characters are in your story. Instead, you don't lay out who they are in the beginning of your story. Okay? For example, in real life, do we show who we are already in the first day of classes? No, we don't show I don't show my personality to my first day of work, right? So that's the disadvantage of telling a story. So you have to do the second method, which is showing a character because it is more interesting. It reveals the complexities of your character gradually. So over the long period of your short story, the complexity of the character is gradually revealed. That is how we show character. Okay? Character reveal themselves all throughout the story, not all at once. Not just in the first paragraph of the story because you believe it is the exposition. No, you don't reveal the entire complexity of your character. It should be done gradually when you do the second method, which is showing a character. Now, we are all familiar with the quotation actions speak louder than words, right? And that is actually the case in fiction writing. Actions are in demand in fiction writing because actions reveal so much of who are your characters. It reveals so much of who your characters are. Okay? Now, using action as a way to show a character is usually the strongest method that we could use. For example, I'll be using the Great Gatsby again. If you have watched this scene, this part, when Daisy met her cousin Nick for the first time in so many years, she laughed again, as if she said something very witty, and held my hand for a moment, looking up into my face, promising that there was no one in the world she so much wanted to see. That's the way she had. So Nick is the narrator of the story, The Great Gatsby. And here she was describing an action of Daisy, meaning Daisy was so happy, was so delighted seeing him, and it was like Daisy saw nothing but him. That's how excited she is. And by this action of Daisy, we can infer that Daisy is a jolly person. Daisy is always excited. She is childlike, not childish. She is childlike. So that's it. Actions. The second component of showing a character is through by dialogues or by the words that the characters are delivering in the story. Okay, what they say, how they say it, and other times what they do not say. That could also be part of showing a character. Okay, because in real life, that's what we do, right? In order to get to know people, we talk to them. That is the same with fiction writing. We show a character by what she says, by how he or she says the lines, and sometimes by what they do not say. Okay. For example, again, in the Great Gatsby, Daisy can be inferred that it can be concluded that Daisy is childlike, or sometimes she has this childlike silliness based on the following dialogue. Do you always watch for the longest day of the year and then miss it? I always watch the longest day in the year and then miss it. So she was she was literally answering her own questions. So based on that dialogue, we can say that Daisy has this childlike silliness, right? And if you watch the movie, Daisy is really graceful, right? Especially in delivering the lines. She is not that straightforward. Okay, that's who Daisy is based on what she is delivering. Now, the third way of showing a character is by his or her appearance, by his looks, his or her age, his or her clothing style, the way the character interacts with other characters, even his or her facial expressions and body gestures would reveal aspects of personality of your character. Lastly, we can have the thoughts of our characters. We can enter into the minds of our character. In fiction, we are flexible, especially in getting inside the characters' minds, so that we can easily lay out these thoughts to our readers. Now, for example, in The Great Gatsby, the actual narrator is not a major character. Okay, he is Nick, the cousin of Daisy. Now I have here an example wherein the writer enters into the mind or into the thoughts of the narrator. I like to walk up Fifth Avenue and pick out romantic women from the crowd and imagine that in a few minutes I was going to enter into their lives and no one would ever know or disapprove. Sometimes in my mind, I followed them to their apartments on the corners of hidden streets, and they turned and smiled back at me before they faded through a door into the warm darkness. At the enchanted metropolitan twilight, I felt a haunting loneliness, and felt it in the others. Poor young clerks who loitered in front of windows until it was time for a solitary restaurant dinner. Young poor clerks in the dust, wasting the poignant moments of night and life. It's a long paragraph, but we are able to enter into the mind of Nick. He was imagining picking up romantic women. He was imagining dating them. He was imagining following the women to their apartments. He was imagining all of these things until he felt that loneliness. Okay, so much could be revealed by these components. Okay, the actions, speech, appearance, and thoughts. When we use these methods, we will create a sense of depth, a sense of deepness in the moment to moment experience of the story. Now, for your worksheet number 7, I want you to return to the character that you showed in worksheet number 6. This time, you're going to put this character in a fictional world and let him or her reveal himself herself. Okay? Now, what is the situation? Imagine that this character is entering the waiting room of a therapist's office for the first time. Now, it's up to you what kind of therapy is that. But chances are that the character will be feeling a little stressed. Okay? Now, keeping the character in the waiting room, I want you to write a passage wherein he or she is revealed through the four methods: action, speech, appearance, and thoughts.